Dude, it's a day. Welcome to the Art of Rock. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge the Tongva people as being the traditional landowners of where I am, which is Hollywood, California. Oh yeah. Secondly, the Art of Rock is all about overcoming writer's block, and it's bloody awesome. So please join us for this. And we are here on Angelspit's Twitch and or Patreon. I'm sorry, YouTube every Saturday morning at this time. And we're late because I messed up with this technology. This is brought to you by Angelspit's Patreon. Want to help me out? Throw me a few bucks. That would be amazing. Or not, because most of it is in-tracked free. On Wednesday nights, there is an amazing deep dive into synthesizers on Vulture Culture. Check that out. I'm wearing the t-shirt. Oh yeah, that t-shirt. Got to keep them going. Non-stop music from the bleeding edge is MTV TV, and we're going to raid there afterwards. It will be astonishing. I want to do a big shout out to Raziel, who is co-host and keeps this show going.
Hey, yeah, good to see you.
Thanks, baby. And all of the other fantastic humans who will hopefully be joining us today are here. Booyah! Welcome. Okay, I think we can go live there. So many buttons to push. It's insane. Welcome. Okay, I want to talk about design, logo, typography, and colors. And my question is, how important is it to you? Like, do you stick to the same logo? Do you stick to the same colors, like corporate colors, branding colors for your band? Do you stick to the typography, as in this is the font that we always use to present ourselves? Go, rant. I want to hear your thoughts. Or do you think it's a whole big waste of time? Brett, talk to me.
For me, the one static is the actual symbol itself that I use. Colors, no. Typography, no. With that said, I am a creature of habit. So there might be the illusion of such. But with that said, there's a lot of fun in messing with your logo. You know, when you start a movie, for example, a lot of times they'll mess with like the Paramount logo, or maybe not Paramount, but some of the others, to where it kind of blends with the movie. Often it's really fun to do that with your own typography, font style, art style. I do scratch art sometimes, and one of the things I like to do there is actually just scrawl new ideas for logos, including the symbol. That's one of the things that I just call them little doodles, but no, huge fun. I recommend it.
That's great. I guess my question, thank you, Raziel, and I like the question also is, and you did answer it, is that when you want to see your band on a poster or something like that, is there a font that you want it in? A recognizable font?
The font, not so much. The thing that I'm using as that recognizable symbol, or if you will, versus the font, is actually the symbol.
Okay.
So that's kind of, the moniker. If I do nothing else, I'll add the symbol in some form, in some color variation, and that one will be mine.
All right, good on you. Thank you. Rosie, what are your thoughts on this?
I would love to say that I had such a unified branding thing that the shifting aesthetics could be applied to it and make you think, oh, that's clever, they're moving with the times. But I don't use my logo symbol enough, nor the stylized spelling of the band name. We started out with lowercase y, capital everything else, small caps, exclamation points inverted like in Spanish, and like that was pretty solid as far as you can play with that. But it didn't really carry through to say what I wanted to say in the creative side, which was I want to find, metal type and take a photograph of it and make a rubber stamp of that photograph and make that on the artwork. I want to use some sort of cut up style or collage or found art and incorporate that in. I want to do these manipulations, and maybe there was a future in that, but I found that between the Bauhaus and the Swiss International style, there's so much more freedom to fuck around. I mean, in some ways the rigidity of the international grid style, where white space means something and sans serif type is the neutral voice, and you can make meaning with the size of your type and the contrasts and the placement on the page, got to be more interesting. And this is all way post Carson Raygun kind of shit, where it was all cluttered pages and filling with texture and exploring dirt and crud. So someplace between those two things, there's a fascinating space for balancing recognizable structure that it communicates clearly, which is what we're doing. Let's face it, we want to say something. If we're bothering with an image or words, we're trying to communicate something. That clarity, and also the feelings that you can get with pure texture and less clarity of communication. So I've got a long, when I get into it, I love to just obsess about this stuff and really think it through. But the short answer is I haven't stuck to my original, decades old design devices, and I've instead pretty much explored as I probe and find out and pseudo-intellectualize about design schools and stuff like that, which I find to be fun, and hopefully it still works.
That's excellent. Do you, Rob, I see your hand. Just give me a sec. So, Rizzy, is talking about this stuff and is because when you said I want to find the actual machine parts, like
God,
that's right up my alley. I actually looked for that once, and it was going to cost me a mint for Angelspit. So does that inspire you? Like, does that go, oh,
I think you can guess that yes. I mean, just by the the amount of energy that I feel even talking about this stuff, for sure. This is creative space. It is creation of objects. It is part of the experience of making music for me, is that I get to do an album cover or song art once in a while, or design something. And I think the last thing that I was searching for was this is just an example of trying to find original sources of things and knowing what they're about. Somebody had a sign in their YouTube video in the background of a Cyrillic and Georgian script warning sign of keep out. And it was the best skull in peril electrical hazard sign I'd ever seen. And also that sort of Cold War era Cyrillic, you will die, it'll kill you, and the Georgian script, which is also very strange looking to the Western eye. Looking for the original design of that thing, it was kind of cool. I found a lot of other sources, and I found maybe I'm not creating in this moment, but I'm definitely feeding the inspiration at looking at these beat up old signs on fences in freaking Kiev or something from the Cold War era and before that. And before that, I had looked at the original signs from the machine shops that This Machine Kills Fascists was printed on, and learned a lot. It's beyond Woody Guthrie, and I've probably forgotten 90% of what I read, but there's like inspiration and politics and education and social stuff wrapped up in all these little design things that some people are opposed to. Some people get offended when you start talking about these abstracts and looking at the history and concepts, rather than, hey, just put it on the page, man. Draw a figure and be done with it. But that's where I do find, like you asked, that's creativity, that's work, that's part of the aesthetic and in audio and visual and stuff. Like, I just love it.
Yeah, well, I'm not even going to talk on this one. I'm just going to be throwing, and Rob, I see your hand. Because to me, the design, like if I have an album that I don't know what the hell I'm doing, get my hands covered in paint and typography and cut out some stencils and cut out stuff and muck around, and I will get the inspiration for an entire album from that.
Well, touching things like that can really, absolutely.
Yeah, like musically. But that's just me. Rob, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think it's really important to your band identity or your art persona, and finding that specific imagery that summarizes what you're all about, what you feel should be the mood of your music. And I used to do this stuff a long time ago. late 80s. I was in Quark Express, PageMaker, all the early stuff. And you had to do postscript marking in RGB in order to get it to print correctly and all be lined up and all that sort of stuff. And you sort of learn these little nuances very early. Well, I learned these nuances very early in my multimedia career. And as that flowed on, you kind of learn how to print your band logo on a CD, which in itself was quite an effort and an art. You had to get the right tools. You had to know exactly how to lay it out on the sticker. And then to be able to print the damn thing to look half decent was also really challenging. And then what I learned over the years working with graphic designers is they like to use a style sheet or a palette, and they'll sit with you for 20 minutes just going through, asking you questions, saying, what is the mood that you want to portray? And, and I'll end up with usually 3 colors, and it could be, black, red, and purple, or whatever the case may be. And they'll start taking you through kind of like templates where you'll get to see all of your stuff, your art that you've given them as source material, laid out in that style sheet until you kind of start smiling and going, yes, right? And once they understand that style sheet, how that's configured, what it looks like with your material, then they can start creating content for you, which is always going to be in that style, including the fonts that you want to use. So, back in the day, you collected fonts. It was a thing. So, and they were hard to get. They were really hard to get approval to use for commercial items as well. You could have for home use, but not for commercial. And so sometimes I have to dig and find font packs so you can write anything you want in that font pack. Then you've got to colorize it with a style sheet. And then you sit with the artist and say, is this what your band name should look like? And it takes time. And you got to invest in that to either with an artist or yourself. It takes a lot of time. And then to summarize, when you use a logo to put on something, that logo has got to gel with the style sheet and the name of your band. It's got to be representative. It can be completely, hopefully, unique. And you got to work out how to place that logo. So back in the day, I had to make music videos and place logos on the spine of the VHS tape. So you had to do your front cover, your back cover, and then down the spine, you had to get everything to fit in. And it's like, how do we want this to look? Is it going to be vertical? Is it going to be horizontal? Placement and identification really matters, especially if you're going through an old LP store. As soon as you see the colors for something that you recognize, like I'll hold my T-shirt up, Faith No More. It's kind of immediately identifiable, and you know what you're finding. You don't really have that these days so much. Sure, you can buy LPs, but where are people finding your logos? Where are people finding your imagery today? That's a really important question. And I think it's not where they're finding it. It's what you're pimping. So you're pimping it on Twitch, you're pimping it on Instagram, you're pimping it on Facebook, you're pimping it on YouTube. How are you getting that instant automated excitement? Because what's going to happen chemically is if people love your music and they see your logo, they're going to get excited. And that's really important because that's connecting with them. That's what I got.
Thank you. Especially the part about VHS. So I've done something terrible and I'm on Etsy right now, and there's a heap of people who are doing like rub-on typography. Damn you. And it's awesome.
Do you mean like Letraset, burnishable
Yeah, you put it
dry
on.
transfer?
Yeah, rub it on transfer.
Helvetica, man.
Oh man. Well, I'm looking. Oh yeah, I'm having trouble finding universal condensed because that's my font. Oh man, it's everyone's font. But yeah, it's well. No, I'm gonna shut up, Ivan. I want to hear your thoughts, and I'm gonna jump in. And Welcome in, Adam. If you want to talk, put your hand up. Ivan, go.
Okay, so visuals, I mean, you know, your typography and your color set and the your unique, vision of what's going to be included in it, in the image. Like all of that in the end, I mean, like it's marketing. We're, like that is its primary tool is to convey a message about who you are and what you are, to, the listener. And then the music itself is the product, or you yourself is the product. um and I yeah spent a lot of quality time at Midway Games. And at Midway, before or as a game project was starting, we would spin up a wiki just for that particular project. And went out of my way to make it super easy for the devs to add to that and edit it and change it and do crazy shit with it, because that's what kept it alive. And they would devote tons of material to the look and feel of a game. Bring in inspirational, images or videos, or even music, would just get loaded up onto the wiki. And, the designers could then just go spend quality time um, making sure that their material was, kind of meeting the vision for what the game was going to look and feel like. And it seems okay, like that that kind of approach works really well for, band material as well. I would also suggest that, one of the things that's become very important to me is, if you're going to do a logo, you could just ink and paper that together, and that's functional, and that's reasonably fine until you need to explode it up to, a backdrop for, a show. Now it's going to come out all blocky because, scanner resolution is going to become a problem. This is where, PageMaker suddenly matters a lot. Like using the digital tools to get the logo, get it into an image that you can resize, something raster based, so that like it's always, coming out the same level of smoothness. And
Rob already said Quark Express. We know which side of this we're on. PageMaker.
yeah, PageMaker. But I mean, the tools exist; they make it a lot easier. And and then it simplifies for you doing crazy shit, and then being able to transfer that to other mediums. Because being able to transfer it to other mediums and stay consistent, um, if you just use analog artwork, becomes kind of a problem. And then also I would suggest that, like, your color choices do matter a lot, because like, we've spent, a whole lot of humanity has spent a whole lot of time figuring out what colors do what to people's brains. And you can use that in a good way, or you can use that in an evil way, but either way you're still using it. So like you do need to be cognizant of what you're doing to people, where you're putting their heads at. And be cognizant of the fact that you may become yourself, maybe making yourself less accessible through your use of color. These are all like, this is a massively big subject.
Well, while Carl's shopping for Letraset packs on Etsy, I'm going to put a pin in that for you and ask, after we talk to Adam, if you've gone ink and paper or digital with your own band logo stuff. But first, Adam, it's good to see you. We haven't seen your face in a long time. It's really nice to see you.
Hello, it's good to see you all as well, and thank you for having me on today. I thought Carl wanted to jump in before I...
He's reading. He's
Wow.
shopping.
Thank you so much, Adam. I was actually ready to talk, but since I please, you go first. And I was looking at full cases of Full Metal LEDs.
Yeah,
Like they're on Etsy.
Do
It's
it, man.
fantastic. Adam, please. Thank you, Resi. Adam, take it. The floor's yours.
I suppose Razi's just so used to me interrupting you anyway that we.
Trying to read the room. The look on Carl's face and fascination of whatever the hell he's doing over there really made me want to hear what you had to say instead.
So one thing I want to say is so far you all have touched on a very important thing, and I'm just going to throw the word scalability out there because nobody actually used that word, and so yeah, exactly what you were talking about. It has to be like small enough to be like fingernail art, and big enough to be on a billboard. So good vectoring design is the best way to accomplish that. I myself, my story goes way back to taking all the electives in high school and learning how to do camera ready artwork on blue graph paper and doing all the band logos by hand. It was usually me and one other guy in the band that did all the design work, and it's going back to like silk screening in art class and stuff like that. And Martin Atkins, just as an aside, is still very strong proponent of silk screen your shit on everything. Like come up with something that is infinitely repeatable and put it on everything. He is the master of merchandising. I myself, my thing has always been about promotions, as opposed like I like to think that my stuff would work well in merchandising, but I kind of hit this point where I hate dealing with it. And so I'm really actually not so great at merchandising. But for promotional design, I have a few things that I'm going to throw out there in terms of like theories that I've sort of worked out over very long periods of time. And that somebody mentioned earlier, I don't remember who mentioned it, but that like sort of grunge phase in like the 90s and stuff. Like I was really like the antithesis of that. I have always been very much about like very simple, very clean design, very strongly Bauhaus influenced in so many ways, especially the visual impact of your fonts, which is kind of where this conversation started out. And if you look at the stuff that I have designed over the years, which is pretty much everything I do except for the stuff that Diana's doing, like the logoing stuff, I'm using common fonts, but what makes the logo, what makes it unique is how I'm positioning things and how I'm scaling them next to each other. So like the Wicked Party, right? It's always the Wicked at a diagonal angle, diagonal party under there, and it's always Wicked's in caps, right? And so every time I type the word Wicked and I'm talking about my party, it's in caps. It's the Wicked Party, right? And so I have a particular angle that I do, and it's always that angle, and it's one of those things that's meant to sort of grab and draw the eye. So from a distance, we were talking about scalability is one thing, but like from a distance is a really important thing. And this is a thing that I do with all of my promoter friends at some point. We go to a coffee shop, I'm on tour, I'm DJing with my buddies. We go get coffee in the morning. I see the bulletin board in the coffee shop and I go, oh, and I like make them, I hold their eyes and I go, okay. And I open their eyes and I make them look at the board for like a second or two, just a second or two. And then I close their eyes again. I say, what do you remember from looking at that? What stood out to you? That's the best design poster on this board. You want to design at least that well. But I think a lot of times, with in terms of using common fonts is a very, I mean, I do it all the time. I like type your name in 100 fonts and see what it looks like, and pick the one that looks really good. And I think that I think that like the cleaner and simpler it is, and the more that you use negative space and your sort of classic rule of thirds kind of stuff, all of those things kind of became basic art and graphic design rules for a reason, and when we utilize those, and instead of like you know, the worst posters to me are the ones that are like super junked up and you can't read a fucking thing on it. It's just like, it's like, well, it's a lot of color, it's pretty or whatever, but like in that like second and a half, like I'm in the coffee shop and I look at the poster and I go,
Yeah. I wanted to jump in on two things. Carl, we'll definitely want to go back to you since you do have your hand up, and I think that you probably have something to add to this. There's three things that you mentioned, Adam, that are remind me of things. The way that you render words. I remember the day that a teacher explained to me what was wrong with one of my designs. I think it was a band logo, actually. It was U Shriek, and I had the U bigger and with some expressive curves doing a thing. And she was like, no, that's the opposite. The shriek is the word that has to be, doing something. U is just it's an article or a pronoun or whatever. The shriek is an action verb. That's got dynamicism. So don't fight it, work with it. And I was like, oh yeah. And I didn't do it, but because I'd already made the design, but I will remember that forever. And it speaks right to what you were saying. And then at least the second thing, Adam, is the idea of, I think it's the Chiat Day Volkswagen ads that exemplify that international style where white space matters, the proportion and size of two objects, maybe three if you include the block of copy, and it's all sans serif, it's probably Helvetica, Swiss, international. But they say so much, and it had a different impact at that time when everything was like brush script fonts and 15 sizes and big serifs and little serifs in the same letter, where that was a contrast. But it still is very meaningful to take the lessons from the grid systems of exactly that school, the international style, and using white space as a communication part, scale as a communication part, and the neutral voice of sans serif type as a communication part. Carl does this extremely effectively with his typography, where the size of words matters a lot, in the layouts, and they convey the dynamicism that you're looking for just with scale. Thinking of those things, Carl, do you want to jump in before we go to Rob?
I'd love to, thank you. Yeah, it comes down to, I think, Angelspit's background is doing it with your hands and like printing stuff out, cutting up with a razor blade, with a scalpel, gluing it back together, literally gluing it on a piece of paper, scanning it in. It's interesting that, when you're looking at your band, think about words that sum up what you stand for. Like what does your band stand for? What does your product stand for? Is it about elegance, grace, or is it about destruction, violence, fierce? When you pitch something to Spotify, a lot of those questions, fierce, meditative, high energy. Use those words to try and sum up your band, your sound. Then ask an AI, what font reflects this? And it might give you some shit ideas. It might give you some terrible ideas. Like Adam said, writing the name down in 100 different fonts and picking the one that is like, yeah. And if you can't decide between two, print them both up, rip them up, and stick them back together. And that's really fun because that will therefore become your font with tear lines and everything. Also, the same thing with colors. I think it's important with colors that they're colors that you like. They're colors you're attracted to, because I'm a big believer that the product has to be doused in that specific color. Angelspit's color is Pantone 186, which is kind of a scarlet or Chicago red. And it's important to, because I like that color. My eye's drawn to that color. And if I'm going to wear clothes, they're usually that color. My mocker pot, my espresso and bloody kettle and several other things are that color. If I print out a thank you card for a record that I send to people who are kind enough to back the Kickstarter, it will be close to that color, or as close as I can get, specifically Pantone 186. But that's just me. And that's really, it's a great color because you can sit white on it and you can sit black on it. And it also works nice with certain gunmetals. Um, I'm a big believer that, 3 colors is great. 1 color is ultimate. And it's got to sit with black and white. Um, it's, I'm all about having a font that is, because then you've got your body font. So if you send out a press release, having everything in your font, not just Arial or whatever, is great. If it's specifically your font, it's a great idea. And if you hold that as a PDF and you encapsulate the font into the PDF, every time it will come up using that font. Obviously, it's a readable font. Um, and obviously, it's a readable size of the readable font. Um, so yeah, I had a bunch of other ideas, but Rob, I want to hear where you're at with all this.
Yeah, I haven't been very successful designing my own fonts at all. It was an immense cause of frustration over the years. So I was always scouring the internet trying to find fonts that I was allowed to use and that other artists would agree to use. It really, I mean, the legibility is a big issue, the scalability is a big issue, and that's what I struggle with. When I do some detailed artwork and scan it in, I end up not using it because I've made it too complicated. And that's the story of my life. I just make things all too complicated. But that's just me. So yeah, getting the font is really important. Using scalable vector graphics like SVG format is really helpful. Using PNGs to separate the colors and have empty space around the outlines is really helpful as well, because that gives you a means of separating out the artwork and rebuilding it. I don't tend to stick stuff together, Carl, because I'm worried that if I haven't already scanned it in, then I might screw it up. So I only scan individual pieces of art and then convert them to a PNG, so they're a cutout, and then I'll use those on photo.net, some free tool that works great that I don't have to pay a lot for. That's just sort of the way that I approach it. Is I guess it's still simple, but I still use the fuckery tools in things like photo.net to make different effects to see what it looks like. Because, like, for example, the AI stuff I did for my son's game studio, I used AI to start with. I said, give me a triple helix logo in blue and black, or just two tones. And I generated a bunch of them. I ended up choosing one. And the first thing I did was I separated the colors. So I separated the blue from the black from the gray. And then I started to muck with those 3 colors independently to get the colors that I wanted. And then once I was finished with those color selections, that's when I started to apply subtle effects, like making it a little bit darker, adjusting the contrast a little bit to kind of get it to where I want. And the cool thing about when you adjust the contrast is if you then go and pixelate that image, it will pick up some of the little dots in the background. And that kind of gives it character, kind of gives it a little bit eeriness and a little bit of leftover from the printing machine, if you like. So there's lots of little subtlety things that you can do in cheap, affordable tools to get you the graphics that you're happy with, and then save them as PNG for storage or save them as an SVG or something like that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I have not had any success designing fonts, well beyond my skill set.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you very much. By the way, I'm looking this way because I'm reading some of the really awesome comments, and I am going to have a chat about that. But after Adam, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking that even the chat has mentioned Rob's Faith No More t-shirt there, and so I'm gonna kind of hit a couple of things at the same time, because one of the things I did want to touch on was, Carl, you talking about having the Angelspit red. It is important to have the right red. I have the right red for different projects. So like this project is this red, this project is that red. Very choosy about colors. Rob, would you show us the logo on your shirt there? I want to point out the color blocking here. Like, I want to point out that that is a really simple, basic font. It's not a particularly special font of any type. What really makes that shit stand out is the way that they did the color blocking, right? So using the positive and negative space there, it's a big ass block that really grabs your eye, right? It draws your eye right to the middle of that thing, right? And then it draws your eye right down the Faith No More, right? And so what's really brilliant about the design there, okay, good consistency to the back. But what's really important about the design there that I want to point out is that negative space where they've taken the color and they've used it in the words above and below, and then created the negative space and made the no black, right? And how distinctive that is, right? And so just an example of good design right there. That grabs your eye from a block away. And the important thing that I want to point out about it is it's just a simple font. The thing that's interesting about it is what they did with the font and the way that they position the words, like, you know, Razi was saying about Carl's work and everything about positioning the words. Wanted to bring up a couple other things in terms of color, like when you're doing promotions, especially, like I did a party called the Blackout Ball. And so all the colors that I used in that flyer, I used like this really nice, like seafoam green, and made it like sort of like glowy around the edges and all that kind of stuff. And like deep violet purples and stuff. So it really mimics the colors that get picked out by UV light, sort of like Razi's keyboards in the background there, that color. So the colors that you're using also, you know, in promotions, in your records and all that, they're part of telling the story. And there was the other thing I wanted to say was doing the different thing. So when there are like major trends, and we kind of touched on this a couple of times around, but when there are like major trends in design and everybody is doing the same fucking thing, the best thing to do if you want to stand out is to do something different. Like it's better, I think, not to follow the trends if you want to stand out.
Thank you. I'd be very interested to know, that's another conversation, what trends are around now. Rezi, can I just jump in really quickly to D Bellwether? Your first question was, is there any way to work outside the Pantone? Yeah, totally. You know, you can have whatever colors you want, and in a lot of software, it's great because you come up with a color you like, then you go select that color, and it will tell you the Pantone, or you can stick the RGB into fucking Google or whatever and say, what Pantone is this? Funny thing about a lot of different Pantones is that it's difficult to get the exact color for most screen printing places, because they've got darker scarlet red, for example, but they don't have your exact color, and that's fine, whatever. And another really interesting thing is that you have to be so careful when you're printing from RGB screen to CMYK for print, that you're using a printer that is CMYK and that the design is done for CMYK, because on a lot of software, CMYK and RGB look different because you're looking at print colors on a screen. Screens aren't made for print colors. So it's really important to take it down to Kinko's or whatever, print it on an RGB printer, and actually have, like, I have a Pantone booklet. Woo! Because I'm so legit. And I use it all the time. And my thing is that there's my red, that if ever I take this in somewhere, I will take the Pantone booklet, I will hold the red next to their printed version just to see how close they are. Yeah, there you go. Because I'm a bit of a wanker. Rezi, hit me.
Playing a little bit loosely with what Pantone is actually even for, and what you just described is the purpose. It's a matching system. It's a color matching system, Pantone CMS. And it means whatever your dumb representation of Pantone 348 is on your screen or palette mixture, you look at the Pantone book and say, oh, 348 looks like that. I see. And then your printer just uses Pantone 348 color solid. The end. There's no mixing or anything. However, if you are trying to do a simulation of a Pantone color in CMYK, you will get an approximation. It'll be halftone mixture of the color primaries to get close to that color. Two different things entirely. If you want 348, you ask for 348. They buy a bucket of 348. They pour it in the thing. You get 348. It's that done. Barring you went to a place that doesn't know what they're doing. But that is the purpose of having a book where it's expensive and color fast and you have to buy a new one at the time where it will have faded, is you can look at that color and know what it's going to be. And it doesn't matter what your screen is kind of calibrated to, or, you know, what you are visualizing. You've got a trustworthy, branded and copyrighted name and color code for that thing. And if they do want to mix it in CMYK, you're going to get something that doesn't look anything like it. There's plenty of Pantone solids that are outside of the gamut possible with CMYK. I mean, you can't do metallics in CMYK. You can't do, there's Dayglow. There's a lot of Pantone color books that have outside of the gamut. So just wanted to throw that down there for what the even reason is that they worked their way into our flow. And then Carl, if you are actually getting some metal type, I have two ideas and things that may or may not inspire you to get your hands on it and do stuff with it. The first one is, this is a little jig that contains bits of lead type that the artist Laura used in one of the layouts. So this whole entire wood jig here is just, you know, we took the type, we put it in, it's got the spacers and the slugs and everything, and that was smacked down onto the pages with either a roller or something. I don't remember how we got it, but we actually did the inked to paper using that. Other method, well, I'll bring up a photo of it later, is just grabbing a single line of type and sticking that in a C-clamp so that it held together, and photographing it with different lighting conditions. And, you know, this was probably the 90s last time I did that one. So it was digital cameras, but low res, nothing spectacular. And then you bump up the contrast. And as Rob said, and probably Brett and Ivan might have said also, you get stuff with the edges and the pixels. And once you've gotten that high contrast version of it, you can also vectorize that and either use it as a scalable object or clean it up or leave it dirty. There's a lot of getting it into the digital format once you've had your hands on the physical stuff. But I have a couple of photos just of the type in the C-clamp, and it's also a cool looking object with the lighting. So, man, I hope you're getting some metal type. Flea markets and yard sales, for some reason, the MIT Flea used to have type boxes all the time, so I grabbed a few from that back in the day.
Yes. I'll get to it. Yes. Actually, D, while I've got you here, so you all think it would save a lot of trouble by trying to design in CMYK space in whatever app you're designing in? Question mark. Seems like that might simplify. So what I actually do is, when I do an album cover, I design it in CMYK, and I've got the swatches off to the side, and I'm literally picking the swatches and going click, boom, click, boom. Once the cover is built, because that's going to go to CD, you know, it's going to be printed on CD, and my CD printer wants CMYK. I will convert that to RGB and correct the colors of it. I don't know if that helps. I used to get my t-shirts printed in Chicago, and I got the guy to buy me a 186, a tin of 186, and the agreement was he only used it for me, and I think we like ran out of it, but it was great. It took a couple of years, and he kept it in his fridge. And just interesting, Audrey, that's interesting. So Miss Ballistic is a printing nerd. And I get a lot of stuff printed with her because she knows exactly what to do, and she knows my red. There you go. Just really quickly on logos, obviously 9 Inch Nails. and obviously Skinny Puppy and some others that really, yeah, really fantastic stuff. And David Carson all the way. I think David Carson actually did a couple of Nine Inch Nails albums or something, I think. But I'm such a huge David Carson nerd, and if you haven't, familiarized yourself with the beautiful mayhem of Carson, then do it. And another fun thing to do is go treat yourself. And you might say, "Oh, what sort of architecture you really like?" You might go, "I like fucking whatever." Go spend 30 or $40 on a book. And of specifically of that architecture, and let it inspire you. Let the shapes and everything else really, like, if you're into brutalism, who isn't? Um, yeah, let it inspire you. So go buy yourself a Christmas present, a book, and every time it's time to do an album, or even more fun, go to your local library when they're and borrow a book, or they have book sales in there all the time. Grab a book, buy it, cut it, but you buy these old books, you cut them up, whatever. So, yeah, it's so much fun. I'm actually helping somebody at the moment with their all of this stuff on a new project, and I'm looking at redesigning Ice Planet 9000. I'm very fortunate that I have a niece who is a bloody good designer. She gets that from her mum, and I'm going to hire her to say, give me a reshape on Ice Planet 9000, typography, the whole lot. Probably Angelspit as well, and Black Pill, Red Pill kind of needs to be, which is now Bit Crush, Punk, Riot, Pill, blank stare. Yeah, so that's what I'm doing. Razzie, talk to me. Go.
Just found that photo, which is the example of the band logo in metal type held in the little C clamp, which I wouldn't use that picture for anything except to show instructionally, but that is probably the thing that was photographed, high contrast, turned into the front graphic for the album Unreal Cities. So
that's great.
Fun shit.
That's great. Okay. Thank you so much. There's that. Does anybody else want to talk about graphic design some more, or do we want to throw it to Rezi, who had some final thoughts about Bode frequency shifters, or more thoughts? So Rezi, tell me about your frequency shifter.
Just bridging the topic. There's a few more images of the thing. One of these might be the actual photo I used, but cool. That's the benefit of archiving absolutely everything and keeping it in your active shared photo library. Live it. We were talking about frequency shifting as opposed to pitch shifting last week, and I was like, oh yeah, that. And I remembered that probably Ableton Live, my DAW of choice, has a fairly good option in their pitch, in their shift tool that is either pitch shifting, which is percentage based, so things sound like they're a different pitch when you transpose them, versus amount based, which relative to each other, all frequencies move together and thus sound wrong when they're in their new place. Theory being 2 times a low frequency, 200 to 400 hertz, is very different than 2 times a high frequency, 20,000, 10,000 to 20,000. But if you do it numerically, the difference between 30 and 31 is a bigger difference than 10,000 and 10,001. So I've, found that to be a beautiful difference, and it doesn't really tell you what it's going to do to know that. But one of the things that I find myself liking to do when tracking, and I've been working on a song this week and listening to things, and I need some effects on them all so that it's inspirational and sounds like something's going somewhere. And I usually use, for widening of a mono source, synthesizers, we usually put chorus on it, which is a pitch effect, generally speaking. Pitch goes up and down. You can do the same thing with frequency shifting in the Bode sense as opposed to the pitch sense, and it sounds different. It's a very different thing, because if you bring it to the extremes and actually go more than a couple of tenths of a cent, like very small amounts, it'll make chaos and sound unpredictable. However, if you do a stereo plus and minus, pan them hard left and right, and use it with a modulator like a chorus, and only do a very, very small amount of Bode frequency shifting, you get some crunchy ass, weird, degraded, not sounding like chorus, almost sounding like grain delays kind of shit. But it's wide and weird and distorted, and I was getting some mileage out of that. So at least 3 of the things have this Bode frequency shifter on them, that 3 elements in the thing, which was making something sound metallic and something sound like wide with this degraded chorus sound, and other things doing robot noises. So if anybody else has any sort of thoughts or questions about employing frequency shifting versus pitch shifting, I would love to know your implementations. And if that's the end of the story, then at least I've found a new tool to dip into. Instead of going to the grain delay that also sounds kind of crunchy, and the chorus that sounds very smooth, this chorus by frequency shift instead of pitch shift is fucking neat.
Okay, thank you very much. Annette, Brett, I see your hand. It's really interesting that if you got a delay and you put the feedback through a frequency shifter, like a Bode frequency shifter, that's getting into really bizarre territory. Yeah, they're great toys, because it's like I have no fucking idea what's going on right now. Brett, what are your thoughts?
So I'm still a little fuzzy about what a Bode frequency shifter is, but it sounds very similar to other tools that I use. So one of the things was, you were talking about widening a mono source. So on the DX7, just like you're saying, it's basically a function of delay for that one. However, I do something different in software where it comes to like vocal effects, and those are very much frequency based. And there's a tool that I straight up use in FL Studio called Stereo Widener. And what it literally does is it allows you to pick a frequency spectrum within a something and then just stereoize that. And so I don't know if that's along similar lines to what you're talking about, but I thought it was interesting, so I figured I'd throw it out there.
It does have some similarities. Yeah, I was going to just, if you don't mind jumping in. One of the ways that we do stereoizing generally is selecting frequencies and putting them in different sides of the panorama. So odd harmonics are on the left, even harmonics are on the right, or a chunk of the high end randomly selected is on one side, and the other chunks get stuck on the left. And that can cause some pretty trippy, weird phase relationships that usually the outer ear is responsible for creating. So they tend to sound out there because of the similar chaos that goes on with all the folds of your pinna. Those, if you animate them or do some modulation to them, they can be interesting. I've definitely used those. I struggle to define in a useful way what Bode versus pitch means. But in practical terms, shit gets metallic and weird sounding as you pitch shift it, as opposed to sounding higher and lower, because the frequency relationships get fucked up. So the ratios between your low to high spectrum get very mangled as you mathematically move your frequencies up, versus they stay related. So things that a chord sounds like a chord, it's just in a different key as you do frequency shifting, where the percentages change to scale. So yeah, to give the easiest answer that's actually useful, Bode shifting generally introduces inharmonicity and metallic noises and weirdness, whereas pitch shifting, we all know what that does, is formant or not formant, and pitch and chipmunky, that kind of shit. Like those are very different beasts with a similar interface to cause them to happen. So they get kind of lumped together. Indeed, in Ableton, pitch and frequency shifter are in the same device. I hope that actually goes somewhere toward shedding light on what the fuck this even means, in the process of making music and mixing. But weirdness.
Pitch shifting equals chipmunks and demons. Bode frequency shifting equals robots and aliens.
That is it.
And it's really great because it's like when you start adding controller voltages and shit like that, it squarely comes into, I have no fucking idea what's going on right now, but it sounds wild. So they're good fun, I think. Rob, Rezi, your hand is still up.
It just happens to be, but hi.
Hi. Rob, fill me with your wisdom.
I always want to talk and then the dog starts barking, so don't be surprised if the dog starts barking. Yeah, this is kind of interesting because you've got phase shift as well, and phase shift can also have an interesting effect, especially if you're using LFOs to control the phase for harmonics of a sound. So if you think about in a Fourier series, you've got a wave which decomposes into different percentage strength levels, audio strength levels, if you like, of different subharmonics. And if you start shifting the center frequency up or down that scale, then you're essentially doing a frequency shift. And those subharmonic levels will start to change in their level as well, depending on where you move that center frequency. And the other thing you can do is for all of the subharmonics, if you put them slightly out of kilt, if you move them to the left half a hertz or a hertz, then you will start to get really crazy sounds that you wouldn't have normally found in a regular synthesizer. Because the problem with synthesis is people like to follow notes and they like to tune synthesizers to notes, even with CV. So it's always going to fall to a factory parameter, which is in the nice scale of listening to music. But what we're talking about here is getting outside of that digital discretion into an analog realm where you're creating sounds which are absurd and not musical. And that actually is very helpful for sound design because you can create shit that you've never heard before. That's what I was going to say.
Thank you. This is really interesting because there's a sound that I have always wanted, which is the bass sound in Jean-Michel Jarre's Oxygen 3 or 5. I can't remember. But it's this massive 70s squelching sound. And it turns out to be a Bode. I thought it was a phase shifter, but it wasn't. It's a Bode, which is why I got it, because I love Jean-Michel Jarre. I suck. Yeah, but it's the great thing about a Bode is that you can go soft and it becomes these beautiful fat squelchy things, or you can go extreme and it becomes fucking alien space robots. Phasers are fascinating. I was just looking at the Dope for phaser as well that I have, and it's great. And I'll still say the best phaser in the world is arguably the Bad Stone, when you can get them on Craigslist for like $50, $30. I got mine for $30 and I had to buy the guy a coffee. Yeah, phasers are really interesting. My understanding with the phaser is it takes the signal, then it takes the inverted version of the signal, then it puts the inverted version through a band pass and applies it to the other one, so they're canceling each other out. So my first question is, so what would happen if you inverted it, then you distorted it, then you did the same thing, which luckily on a modular you can do. And then what happens if you just get the most beautiful notch filter in the world and do the same thing? And a lot of the times that I hear a phaser, it's not actually a phaser. It's actually a really good notch filter.
I think it's fair to say that they are synonymous. You cannot achieve equalization without shifting the phase around the frequency you're trying to affect. So if you do a 4-pole phase shift, it's 4 notches of Equalization.
of sex.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and that's one of the reasons I really started getting into notch filters as well, that you can get similar, just turning the volume down, but technically it is using an inverter. But I digress. Rob, talk to me.
Yeah, we had the same conversation actually on Vulture Culture about 2 weeks ago. We had a whole chat discussion about phase shift and can you use a notch filter to invert the signals and what are the consequences of that? The answer is yes, technically. But what you've got to remember is when you're canceling signals out, you might be losing the original signal. So, there's different ways to overcome that if you want to reincorporate the original signal in without affecting it first. Another thing to look at is there's a ton of VSTs out there today which do the Bode filtering. Some of them are wavetable kind of deals where they'll make that effect over a longer duration, and they're worth playing with as well. And a lot of those are free. You don't have to be an audio mechanic to break out the spanners and try to work out the math.
Yeah, like you said, if it's a like a plugin, do it, because you don't want to be spending, and a lot of the Bode shifters in like sorry, the Bode frequency shifters, they're expensive if you get a modular or an analog version, because there's a whole bunch of shit going on in them. They're a really complex circuit, and you look at them and they're these big fat things. And usually within a when a company does a Bode filter, the Bode filter is the most expensive module, or it's one of the most. So definitely just get a fucking software thing. But like you said, there are really, if you put a really slow LFO on it, like really slow, it's a wonderful way to take a pad that isn't really doing a lot and just make it into something really sexy, really like beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And you can also start balling around with the whole stereo thing. Does anybody else want to jump in on the magical, mystical Bode filters or any other filter? Or do we want to rock on and ask Razi about MIDI stuff? So Razi, tell me about your MIDI stuff.
And again, to bridge from the last topic, I'm looking at my shifter device right now, and the amount that I'm modulating the frequency shift to get a chorusing effect is just a quarter of a hertz, so 0.7, 0.75. So not much, and
Wow.
it's enough to drastically wateryize the sound, and that's at a rate of very slow, like it's down in the modulating super slowly.
So comparing it to a chorus, does it sound like a chorus or does it sound like spacey sex?
This one sounds, what I was using formerly as grain delay, which would randomize the channels, like fast. So you'd get a little bit of a pitch shift up and down, left, right, really fast, small grains for a crunchy, hazy, fucking put some hair on it effect. This is doing something similar to that, but without the clickiness of the grain delay version of that. So it's between a chorus and a grain delay, but with quickly verging into metallic overtones, weirdness.
Sexy.
Yeah, I'll have audio examples once I'm done with this piece too. It's good fun. The other thing, MIDI, we all sort of use it. Hopefully we mostly ignore it and doesn't ruin our lives in any way. And it's underpinnings of our entire existence at the same time. I don't know about you, but the DIN5 plug is a icon of all icons, to me as a musician. As somebody who doesn't use patch cords with his synthesizers quite as much, I was using MIDI plugs. So getting MIDI from a controller to a target, getting MIDI from your controller to your sequencer to your playing devices. And we've talked about a couple of times the patch librarians, which need to talk both ways so that your target device and your patch librarian running on your computer are speaking in and out to each other so that they can handshake and have a dialogue. Like all of those things have very specific hardware applications, and it's a lot to keep track of from the beginning. But MIDI hasn't really gotten more complicated since 1982. Ask Dave Smith. Whatever year we started down this road. MIDI 2.0 exists. MIDI 1.0 is generally the spec that we rely on. MPE exists, but most of the original suite of controllers and node-ons and offs and velocities are where we live. Also channelizing and ports. The big difference in most of our lives is we're plugging in via USB. We don't even see the DIN5 plug. So each device on our central computer or whatever our thing is has its own MIDI universe, its own 16 channels, its own port. And getting those to talk back and forth to each other, to control the right things, generally falls on the DAW. That's the DAW's, one of its functions is when you've got a track selected that says my synthesizer across the room, your controller keyboard on your desk plays your synthesizer across the room, and that's just what it does. That was fun to get working. It's a solved problem. It mostly works. But hopefully anybody wants to chime in with any kind of answer to this. Do you use any more advanced MIDI filtering tools, maybe within the DAW, but maybe outside of it, to, if your DAW's not running, you still want this to happen? If your piece of hardware normally connects to devices, but you want to switch them, do you have to fire up your DAW, or can you just switch something? That's the basic question I was asking earlier in the week, and I found some solutions. And there's certainly plenty of MIDI filtering and patch baying and piping software, some complicated Bode, BOEM MIDI, still Bode, BOEM MIDI processor, some very simple ones, MIDI pipe and MIDI patch bay. I guess, so let me just bring it to a question. If anybody has anything to chime in on, what's your strategy for the different scenarios in which you need to get some shit done and play a lick, and your computer's going to get in the way, or maybe it's not because your computer's always on. Please.
So for me,
Thanks, Brett.
I use those same tools that you were mentioning there, MIDI patch bay. Let's see, what's the other one? Loop MIDI. What I'm doing when I use those tools, obviously I'm not using the DAW because I've taken control of the USB MIDI interface, and I'm assigning it to instruments. Typically what I'm doing is some sort of jam session. So far I've not implemented any sort of recording there. My thought is maybe do something in regards to like sound design, or sampling myself in that regard. But really it's about, I use those tools to everything the MIDI side of things with outside of the DAW, essentially is the short and sweet. So that way, if I play this curves well and I want that synthesizer to play, it's already done in the underlying framework. But that's kind of how I design the system too, so the computer DAW interface in that regard, as we've gone through previously, is really purpose built to get that into the system in some format and to manipulate it in the USB world. So short answer, I haven't done any recording with it. I have done plenty of sessions where I take things like drum machines, and instead of choosing the drums, I choose the notes, but then I'll use the drum machine as that injection tool of MIDI into it to see what it does to the synthesizers. I've done that more and more though with audio than I've done with MIDI.
Thank you very much. Rob, tell me about your MIDI.
That's a personal question, Carl. Yeah, so I've got the fancy patch bay thing, which it's awesome. But it is separate from the DAW, but it's still really the same as a DAW. Like it's a piece of software on your computer, and you go to that piece of software, and you can set up and save a template, and that's the MIDI timepiece by Motu. So it's a AV one, not the Express. The AV one has a lot more in it. It means that you can synchronize with audio visual timekeeping, which is great for video stuff. And it's just a massive matrix. You can go N to X times whatever types of inputs and outputs you want. The reason why it's a little challenging is because it's not really designed for real-time performance. It's a set and forget. So for real-time performance, I like building a sequence with a sequencer or key step keyboard. It doesn't really matter what it is, an arpeggiator. If I can send that to one synth and then flick a switch, and now it's doing the same arpeggiation for a second synth with a different tone, then that's cool. And what I use for that is a little manual MIDI switch. So that's got 3 in and 3 through on the back, and it's got 1 in and 1 through on the front. So that's going to be
badass.
my sequencer going in this end and all my synths on that end. And I will basically choose which one I want at any one time. And it's kind of nice because I can discover the sounds that I want, or I can use this as a real-time performer and just switch it as I go. It saves me worrying about multiple outs and then multiple sliders on the mixer, where I can, I might want to muck around with, like I've seen Carl do that with his monstrosity yesterday in his live stream. He's bringing in different channels on the Yamaha 01V. I can do the same thing with this MIDI selector. It's just flick a switch and you're done. Your levels are already set. Is that what you're talking about, Razi, or are you talking about doing something else?
Yeah, that is part of it. My application, I'll get my own answer to anyway. I wanted to prompt conversation and see what people are still using, because the thing at the bottom of my rack that doesn't actually have power applied to it is still a JL Cooper MSB Plus, which is 2 ins, 8 outs, merges the 2 ins if you want. Doesn't do a lot more than that. It's not the device that I want to use for any of this. And just hearing how people are doing stuff in this modern day and age, 50, 40 years after that was made, what the software and logistics in the studio look like to different people. So yeah, it's interesting. My specific application is going to be removing a lot of sysx traffic from a particular stream and leaving it out as a basic setting. I have a noisy mixer that speaks a lot of sysx for the meters and maybe some other stuff, real time, keep alive, who knows. Don't need it in the stream, not using it. It clouds up all of my MIDI monitoring. And if I'm running it over the network, it's extra overhead, which is probably small compared to video, but still. This is merging, filtering, and selecting a controller and target device that's going to basically stay that way, which it's part real-time performance because I want to walk up to it, like, Rob was sort of talking about, and it's Brett was talking about, and it's part leave it set up like Rob was talking about. So it's a little of both, actually. All of this is super interesting to hear. But I don't have the filter and patch device that I love yet. I did start writing one, which there's plenty of Python libraries that are mostly built to do this, and you just sort of select what they're going to do as long as you can enumerate and read the names of your devices from the OS, which now we're talking not exactly the musical part of it, but menu bar app that just does this.
Yeah, that was where we were talking about the other day, where you can there's a MIDI in, MIDI out port ready to go with an I2C circuit card on it. And you can plug that into a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino, and you can have as many of those chained up as you want. And you can build your own kind of MIDI patch bay if you want.
Love it. Absolutely. And it took me a while to spell squared C in a way that I could actually get a search result, but I understand it now.
I hate MIDI. I cannot verbalize how much I fucking hate MIDI. So the beast to get, in my humble opinion, is this incredibly old piece of crap called a Kawaii MAV8. And Rob, it is exactly like what you were talking about before. 4 in, 8 out, and they're sliders. And you push the slider to wherever you want. It's bloody awesome. I've got a similar Korg version because I couldn't get an MAV8, and now there's a couple of them on Reverb. Ivan, don't. And I had one of these things in university, and it made my life so much easier because I could just go click, 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 done. I have a similar thing. I've got a Motu colossal pain in the ass that drops its fucking memory every so often, decides to mute channels or to put everything onto channel 1, or does all this stupid horse shit every now and then, and it drives me nuts. And I wish I had a more easier option. I wish there was like a 10 in, 20 out. Click, click, click thing. That would be fucking dope. I would love that. On the Motu awful pain in the ass, I have 3 different setups. One is I'm live jamming, which I never use because it's such a pain in the ass. The other one is studio, which I always use because it's usually works. And the other one is K2000 talks to everything, which is theoretically the one that goes, will let that everything is listening to the K2000. Like what you were talking about, Brett. And I used to lecture MIDI in the early 90s, and you'd think that I know a lot about it, and maybe I do. Yeah, do it, Diana, thanks. Kick it off, baby. Don't even ask. Oh fuck, do I have to do this? So, yeah, I say fuck the revolution, and yeah, so that's what I do. That's, I think, why I've really gone towards modular, because it's none of this stupid shit, and it's good.
Just for the record, I'm totally with you. Analog voltages and signals, controlling shit all day long. But the only things that I have that really do that are my guitars, my voice, and my Simmons pads. So the rest of it, MIDI signals and messages flying around.
Yeah.
Well, I guess there's some other things, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. So, yeah, fucking MIDI. I did a blip vote where I was just complaining endlessly about how much I fucking hate MIDI. So yeah, I don't know. Rob, what do you think about this?
Well, I gotta say that the serial bus technology that MIDI is based on is so antiquated now that it could be done so many other ways a lot better. You know, I mean, USB is still serial bus too. So USB in itself is not as useful as it could potentially be. If there was a bidirectional bus that allowed multiple controllers to control the same synthesizer in real time without any, stomping on the other commands that are coming through, that would be heaps cool too. Like
something like TCP/IP.
Exactly right. So I got this little guy online, and it's cool. It's fully CC programmable. It's a joystick with the knobs that you need, and it's USB on the back, and blah blah blah. But to be able to have this with 2 or 3 other control surfaces for the one synth, that's what I'm talking about. And that can be quite problematic with MIDI, because you can, with serial, you can have a lock or a race condition with packets, and it can get freaked out somewhat. But
what the hell was that thing?
This thing,
that's awesome.
Yeah, you can find it on eBay. It's a joystick with all programmable pots. They're not they're not continuous rotation. They're, you know, full spectrum. It's got a ID on the front, and you can program this button here, and these knobs tell you which CC for each device. So what you do is you press the button on the back, and then it'll give you the CC000. You start to turn this knob, and it'll increase the CC count. And when you stop the CC, that knob is now that CC. You press the button again, you go to the next knob, and that's the CC you want that one. And you do the next thing for X, and then you do the same thing for Y. And it's cool, and it was actually pretty inexpensive on eBay. You can still buy them. But my issue with that is that it's not very efficient. It's not MIDI is not very efficient in terms it's fairly limited because of the nature of the serial bus protocol. The TCP it's got its own problems. You know, is the guarantee of service. It's not deterministic. You will end up with lost packets with TCP/IP as well. It's a different problem. But anyway.
I'm sorry I mentioned it. It was the first thing that came to mind as something that acknowledges receipt of a packet of information, which is kind of where I thought you were going, but I understand your difficulty with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That little fader box is neat. What's it called, and do you know who made it or anything? It's an interesting.
I'll put it in the chat because I just have to look it up.
Well, I like it. I do have enough things with knobs, and I have the MPK Mini with a small XY joystick as one of the few things that has that. But it looks like somebody's cool project anyway. It's really interesting. We missed we missed your cat. I was hoping to throw to you while the kitty was on screen. It's very important.
USB MIDI controller with 6 knobs joystick.
Hey, made in China.
Yeah, that's what it's called. Yeah, I'm just reading the document that I scanned when I bought the thing, because they emailed me a text file with the instructions in it. Cool. And yeah, it doesn't say anything more than that. So yeah, all the faders are 0 to 127. There's a channel knob for channels 1 to 16, so you can assign them to each knob to a completely different channel, which is nice. And you can set 5 presets, so you can set it up 5 different ways and save it all on the local box, which is nice. But I don't really bother doing that because I use it for something different every time. But yeah, you'll find them on the internet on eBay.
Thank you very much. It's really interesting. My feeling about MIDI is that I have no interest. Like that would be so cool in a live situation. But firstly, for me to implement another piece of MIDI equipment into my studio is a ridiculous pain in the crack. Like, cause I got to crawl around. I don't think I have any open MIDI ports. I definitely don't have any more MIDI ins. I think I might have 1 or 2 MIDI outs. I should sell some gear. I have too much gear. Also, yeah, and it's just MIDI through, MIDI merge, or MIDI merging and all that shit. It's like, fuck, it never ends. I don't know. I think if I was going to go back, I would say in time, I would say just simplify your fucking gear. Have one good gritty shitty sampler, one good amazing sampler, one good fat analog synth, one good digital synth, and a fucking drum machine or a drum module if you give a shit, and then a whole bunch of modular gear, which is only pulling like 1, 2, 3, several fucking MIDI ins. Yeah. I'm such an angry guy. Rezi, what do you think of my anger?
I'm totally with you on that. I think that the ethic that I'm going for is it's a real pain to add anything. When I do finally get something, it's not going to stick. And if I'm going to add something in the way of controlling, you know, a surface that controls a function in my software or that does something over MIDI, it's got to be purpose built. It's got to do that function and look a little bit like it does that function and ergonomically feel like it does that function. And when I look at it on my desk, it's because I want to turn that knob and it does that thing. As opposed to these multifunction inherits a state from your DAW, and maybe it's got a colored LED that suggests what state it's in, but the track isn't labeled the same thing, and it's a bank of 8, and you have to remember that kind of shit. It just doesn't carry for me. I've got I add a controller every year. I get a new thing, and they just accumulate, and then they sit in a drawer until I need to do a specific thing with it. But the trip I'm on right now with this particular MIDI question is definitely in line with your, it's a pain in the ass to add something. But every time I do add something, it's got another MIDI port. So I have no shortage of ins and outs, because every time I plug a USB thing in, it also has a DIN5 connector or two. So this seems like those at least accumulate. So I don't quite have experiencing that problem, but the usefulness of the things that I add, like that's what I'm really sort of seizing on right now, and finding a more or less permanent MIDI utility that's also limited to doing just select which device it's controlling. Don't have to launch a DAW, that kind of idea. That's all this thing does. Sits up in the menu and you pull it down and it says controlling drum machine, controlling synth, that kind of thing. That sort of simplicity is what I'm after, if I'm going to bother, which will be some pain now to create that. And I'm going through a couple of weeks of figuring out what I even want to do. But in the end, I get a simple get back to work button that connects me to the thing that I wanted to play.
Brilliant. Keep us posted, because this is very interesting. Rob, your hand is up. I want to hear your thoughts.
You don't want to hear what I'm about to say, Carl.
Oh, God.
This is going to hurt my brain. I was curious. The Yamaha 01 V96 has MIDI in, out, through. It has a multi-port interface, up to 8 MIDI ports simultaneously. 8x16 is 128 MIDI channels. It does CC codes for all faders, motorized faders. Does pan controls, on off, aux on off, EQ on off, everything. Then it's got non-registered parameter numbers, so you can change frequencies in the EQ, compressor settings, and everything like that with a DAW or without a DAW. It has pitch bend support for faders and rotary parameters. It's got program scene recall, obviously. It's got all the sysx stuff. Then it's got all of your MIDI machine control, so you can start playing drum machines and everything like that with the mixer. Return to zero, fast forward, ready arm. It's got MIDI time code. It's got DAW controls for Cubase, Logic, Reaper, Ableton, and Pro Tools. I have not done anything with MIDI with that mixer yet. I was just getting used to doing the virtual tracks, which is awesome for playing digital back through the mixer and playing with effects real time plugged into the mixer. I've done absolutely fucking fat zero with the MIDI, and I'm kind of glad, because it scares the shit out of me now, to be honest.
I was getting the opposite vibe. I thought you were telling a love story.
No.
That sounds
You know, I was saying that I always do things too complicated.
Yeah.
That mixer is already making things too complicated.
Yeah. This is really interesting.
Send it to me. I'll take it. I want one. I want one now.
This is interesting because my O2R 96 has got all that shit. Well, most of that shit, and it's like I couldn't be fucked. I could control the whole thing via. The only thing I would be using MIDI for is to be sending a controller a program change to change it to the right song. That's fucking it. But nothing else. And then I could just dial it up and hit go. Yeah, I don't. I just don't. It's interesting that I wonder why I'm like this, and I think it comes down to I need to focus, for me at least, on the art of production and making music, and not actually blah 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 blah, blah all the shit it can do. And it's interesting that for so much of my gear, I don't even touch this, don't even scratch the surface on it. Um, and I don't know if that's a strength or a weakness. I should be more open, but it comes down to the more I do, the more fucking around, the more that can go wrong, the more I've got a headlamp on my head and knee pads, and I'm crawling around behind the fucking thing going, why the fuck isn't this fucking thing working? Fuck it.
You're always telling us to, dig deeper in our gear that we've already got, Carl.
Yeah, don't. But I'm lying to you. I feel obligated. That's it. Because like the more responsibility you put on it, oh, that the mix is being controlled by this thing, it's gonna not work. For some fucking reason, your mixes, something is going to go wrong, and you're gonna spend an hour or two where you're so excited about making music, and then by the time you figure it out, it's like, fuck this. I want to fucking eat a pizza and watch Lord of the Rings. Fuck it. And I guess that's my thing, is that I've gone through and I've got rid of everything that pisses me off. As you can tell, a lot pisses me off. Yeah, I just couldn't be fucked, because it's going to go wrong and I'm going to turn into one grumpy poo head. Brett, do you want to comment on your anger issues? No, or I'm going to end up calling you. So I do this for Brett.
That's right. That's right. It's all good. I always enjoy hearing from you. Anywho, so I've got a couple of thoughts that kind of touch on several things that we're kind of talking about, but it's also kind of unrelated. But anyway, where it comes to MIDI, I had a lot more issues with it before I took the approach that I have now. And that is, it's a very static approach. Get everything to the DAW, let the DAW handle the complexity. To that regard, there's a couple of things that I do to simplify my world, or complicate it, depending on how you want to look at it. What you don't see is the huge USB chain that sits back here. That's, if you want to look at cable snakes, that's the one you want to pay attention to. With that, you're talking probably 4, 5 different 12 to 24 port powered USB hubs. They feed and connect to everything pretty much. They're the reason I can have things on one side of the studio and connect to the other side of the studio using things like the PreSonus or whatnot. So the machine itself has its own USB network, if you will. That works great in the studio. I am not suggesting this format for someone who takes their gear mobile and goes gigging. Maybe it'll work. I would think that you would want something more ruggedized, something maybe you need to build something. I don't know. But as far as MIDI goes, it has eliminated a lot of the BS. Now I'm not using it for what it was intended for, except for the total basic, what channel, what port. And if I'm going to expand, if I run out of channels on my Motu, and I've seen, by the way, having it hooked up the USB chains also helps me deal with the problems with the Motu, because the powered USB hubs, I can just turn the Motu off and then turn it right back on. The DAW picks right back up and says, "Oh, there's all my devices again," and away I'm done troubleshooting. It also goes with the same thing. If I want to add a second Motu, I'm still only dealing with ports and channels where it comes to the DAW, and so I can take on another bank of 8, and go that route. I've not needed to go that route yet, but I'm close. The reason I haven't needed to go that route kind of comes back to using your old toys over and over and over again. And that's kind of where lately I've been on more of a analog kick. In that regard, my thought is maybe I can do some MIDI things to some of the effects chain stuff, and then treat some of these older instruments I've got guitars, basses, and whatnot, kind of like you did with a blaster beam. But then run that just through so many effects and so many different processors that you can't tell what it was anymore. It is simply the sound that's going into the system. And then I can use MIDI, or I can use the DAW, more importantly, to be that control plane and do what I need to do to the audio beyond that point. Just a couple thoughts.
Yeah. Good stuff. Thanks, Brett. Rezi, hit me.
Let's bring it right back to what the creative application of some of this, not all of it, some of this actually is. The scenario I have this week, other weeks, sitting back, holding the guitar, both hands are occupied. This hand is much more free to do stuff, to show you the position of your volume, and has, let's say at minimum, a track arm for recording. All I'm talking about is doing your punch-ins. Real simple little thing. I'm just talking about, like, you wrote your master track and it's pretty good, but you've got 5 or 10, maybe 20 places that you need to do a little extra lick or fix a note here and there. This goes for vocals too. Just imagine the same thing with your vocals. Got your 3 tracks of guitar. You want to select among them. You want to insert your auto punch point, and you want to hit play and record on that armed track. I am a convert. Having the Rotopod on my desk that does those things that I said, motorized, positional, named tracks, color-coded, all that shit, is the device that I was looking for, almost, to do a fast work and not have to seek on the screen, and not have to take both hands off the guitar, and not have to switch modes cognitively into looking at a computer GUI. It's back into this hardware-bound music recording machine, and that flow is good. I don't quite have it yet. It's still a thing you got to learn, but I'm realizing that we are, at least for the past 10 or 15 years of Mackie control and other machine control things, Ableton Live has its own control surface kind of scripting. These things will do that. You don't have to program them to say the track names. They just read them off your DAW. So this, I've had other ways of doing it in the past with, other control surfaces, is kind of where I'm going with it, is in the demand for focus and flow and lack of distractions. So you're not clicking the same thing that you get your email on, whatever your motivation is, to be able to get through a 3-minute song linearly without touching the mouse and looking for your pointer on the screen. I'm pretty into that idea. So we'll see if it comes true. I'm close. And a thing just came from Amazon right now that is the next piece of my integrating the knobs. So I'm like eager to go try writing my scripts on this. But so there is a practical thing that I've been seeking as far as creativity flow goes, that all of this feeds into. And keeping a MIDI connection from these devices to my target devices, whether the DAW is running or not, is certainly part of that. I'm not recording if the DAW is not running, but there's other things that these knobs should always do. Maybe it's just a USB device, maybe it's MIDI, all these things. There's a lot of decisions to be made, and it's a pain in the dick. And Carl, all of your hatred for MIDI and the complexities and keeping things going, I get that, I feel it, but I'm also trying to get through that pain point for a few weeks or months, and then come out on the other side, having lived many decades of not having a control surface that does these kind of cool things, to having a working system, maybe for the rest of my life. And that would be pretty awesome if I can get through this and do that with MIDI tools.
I think it's awesome that you're trying this, and I want to keep posted, because I've always wanted foot controllers and blah blah blah. I've always wanted a foot controller, like a MIDI pedal board, like with notes on it, like an organ. Never. Here's Frank. Rob, talk to me.
Yeah, I haven't broken out the FCB controller foot pedal for a long time. I've got one of those. It's got, was it Razi? I think it's got 6 pedals on it. I can't remember.
Two continuous control pedals and 10 momentaries that can be toggles.
Momentaries, that's right. Yeah, and those are pretty good. I mean, that's a product made by Behringer, who did a good job of a product by themselves without copying anyone else's design. They did a pretty good product, but it was back in the early days of MIDI, where MIDI controlling was a little bit still sparse and clunky. But you know, Brett will have an opinion of this thing. This is good for many reasons, and it's also challenging for other reasons. But this is the Akai Fire tablet, and it was designed specifically for one door. A little bit like how Novation designed a lot of their MIDI controllers just for Ableton Live, which is great, but it's limited. But this thing's got all your transport on it. It's got your metronome and your tap to get the rate you want. It's got assignable for filters, resonance, you know, gain, pan, all that sort of stuff up here. You can select which track you want to be on, and it'll illuminate as the track's playing through each bar. And what's nice about this is that you can put two of these in a row, and it'll show the full song. Or you can stack them. So if you've got more than 4 tracks, the track selector will go up and down banks. But if you USB 2 of these together this way, you'll end up with 8 tracks, and you can actually have a grid of 4 of these little babies, and they're pretty cheap. I've got 2 of them to join them at wherever way I want. Downside, it's limited to FL Studio, and the other downside is it's only limited to it only works on one version of FL Studio. I think from memory it's FL64, not the 2020 something or other. Brett, you can correct me, but I've only got it working on one install of my FL Studio.
I've got it work. I've had it working ever since it came out on every build that's
on both. Yeah, I've heard that there's a bug in the software patch where it's not
like the 32-bit.
Yeah, no, it's not 32. It's the FL64 or the 2020 up. There are 2 versions, and it's only programmed to work with one of those. And I've actually experienced that. I haven't been able to use it on one of my computers.
I know that any of the later versions, I mean, you might be right, but I've not had, since it came out, I've not had an issue with FL Studio being incompatible with it at all.
Oh, cool. Yeah. But anyway, it's a cool tool. It does what you need, Raz, but it's very limited environment.
Awesome. Fascinating. I've always wanted a controller that would go blip, blip, blip. Well, I guess there's the bass, the step, ulterior beat step thing. Frank's on my lap right now, and he's just sitting on my, this is very strange, and he's gone. Yeah, I've always wanted something that would do something like that. And this is the other thing, is that my computer, because it's being such a bitch, it's going, no more USB. If there's USB, I'm going to crash, you bastard. It's horrid. Rezi, talk to me.
It's definitely an ongoing conversation with your computer about which USB devices work on hubs and which ones need to be directly attached and which ones are never going to be compatible and which cables actually do what they say they're going to do. I did want to just run back to the FCB 1010 is a metal built-in power supply, extremely heavy, quite rugged, and very basic switches and 2 pedals, continuous controllers. But it's also got some inputs for extra switches, and it's got, you know, DIN5 input and output. I have the Uno software in mine, so that adds some stuff. So you can do stomp style things instead of just doing this bank select. I'm not going to go into detail because it's gibberish, but the way that I did it is I made some preset and I wrote big labels on it to say what the things did. So this turns chorus on and off, this turns bass on and off. But Carl, you could definitely do this so it's MIDI notes on and off, and you could stomp. It's not made as a Taurus pedal style organ pedal, but certainly you can do note ons with it and controllers with the pedals. And they're
Is the Uno a firmware update you're talking
yeah,
about?
yeah, it's a EEPROM that you throw in it, and it's just a different programmer and a whole different set of features than it originally shipped with. If you go to fcb1010.uno, that is Indeed, yeah, that's the site. I'm almost positive that's the one I have. I did just have to look it up because it's been a long time since I put it in, but that rang is familiar. I'll throw it in the chat. Anyway, cool
Awesome.
device, Stompy, does stuff like that.
I was actually looking at one. Here's Frank. Say hi, Frank.
Oh, kitty.
Do you want to say anything? I was looking at that one because the reviews are actually really good. And the pedals output MIDI controller, so just reasons it was a good option. And I was looking into if the actual stompies could become notes,
Yes.
but so they can become, you can
Yeah,
program them to be
with
notes.
with the Uno firmware. I can't speak to what the original allowed for, but I'm pretty sure even the original B company, software did that. At any rate, Uno upgraded firmware, yes, absolutely. You can program arbitrary commands into the pedals, and they have toggle states, not just like, you can either do momentary or toggle or three-way, different things like that. So there's a lot of,
Yeah,
you can get in there and do that.
that's really cool. Oh God, because I was looking at the Taurus and I was looking at all these Studio Electrics. No, Studio Logic has one. But there's one I used a while ago that could do all of this different MIDI. The Ken West or something. I can't remember what that was. Most awful.
MIDI step or one of those.
Yeah.
They're good. Ken McMillan or Ken
Yeah,
Millen?
they're brilliant, but the actual like the actual foot pedal itself, it's great because it'll fit in your backpack, but it's bloody awful. It's awful.
Like this, you're not going to carry around for fun unless you wanted to get exercise. It's the opposite. It's
Yeah. Yeah, and it was, but it had the best. You could tilt the control the pedal, and it would pitch bend or send off control or whatever you wanted. It could broadcast on up to 5 different channels. It was bloody awesome. It was so good. But you could do, it had pressure on them.
Yep.
So you could hold it down and push down and get a big frequency filter swell. Brilliant, but bugger them because the bloody foot pedals were awful. Frank agrees with me. He's sitting on the seat. Your hand's still up.
Yeah, I mention this every time this comes up, but I'm still going for it. Like that thing's been in my closet, the FCB. This is what's actually on my floor right now in use. Fewer pedals, but you can program the momentaries to do the same kind of stuff, toggles and stuff. And it's got at least one controller, CV, CV in to MIDI CC or whatever you want it to do out. And this I use for expression, and I throw to delay throws with this. The other ones are to change state of guitar effects on off. So my application is, this is MVAVE Chocolate. M-VAVE.
Thank
USB
you.
or Bluetooth. And the Bluetooth is rock solid so far. It just reconnects when I turn it on.
That's brilliant. I feel that this is a nice place to go. Thank you very much, and call it and right on over to MTV TV. Unless anybody has any last minute things they want to talk about. Okay, this has been the Art of Rock, and this has been our conversation about music making, technology, and all sorts of fun stuff. Frank says hi back to you, Diana. Thank you. Every Saturday we are here on Angelspit's Twitch or YouTube. Please join us. This is all about inspiring you and making your artwork and doing something besides going home and watching Netflix. This is made possible with Angelspit's Patreon. Join as a free member, or it's as little as $3 a month. And this month, in a few days, the next drop, it's the first Angelspit track from the new album. The Industrial Incisions playlist is where you can go and hear these bands and other bands Vulture Culture's deep dive is on Wednesday night. You will get inspired. They're fucking awesome. Go buy the t-shirt. Go watch the stream. We got to back Alex. This is Angelspit's Discord. Thanks, Frank. I don't know how to use Discord. I'm not going to lie to you. Rezi, thank you again.
And thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here. Glad you have a
Um,
show for us to be here for.
I learned so much from these things, and you guys are bloody awesome. Here's a whole bunch of people who were here or should have been here. Go listen to their music too. If you're a little concerned about the US and you want to do something good about it, go join Indivisible. Just do it. Right now, we are going to fling on over to MTV TV. Diana, hit that raid. So if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or Instagram, that's where we're going. And I promise you, you're going to find your new favorite band. And if you've got a video, send it to them and they will play it. We've got to get behind MTV TV. Spank the Nun is hosting MTV TV on bloody Wednesday. Good stuff, Eric. I had a dream about Eric. Weird. I was watching them make music and it was like, it got surreal. And you know, those dreams that they get surreal. And it was like, wow, now I understand your music more. It was very surreal. Yeah, weird. When I dream about someone, usually it's bad. Sorry, Brett?
Was he wearing Molly Meldrum's hat in your dream?
No, he wasn't, but he did do myself a favor. He actually turned into like this wisp of higher dimensional plasma and he just floated away. It was so weird. While these
hate when
beats are
that
going
happens.
mad. It was great. It's great. Hey, we're rating, right? Have we rated yet?
It rated.
All right. You rock.